Hey, how's it going? So for this module topic, we'll be covering midpoint between 2 points. When it comes to the midpoint, it's a formula for this one, and it's actually on your formula sheet. So you do not have to memorize the midpoint formula, even though as you start to practice, you probably will know it just because it's a very basic formula. It doesn't have a lot of steps to go along with it. All right, but regardless, it is going to be on your formula sheet. So always just reference back to midpoint of a line segment, and you will see it there. The formula for the midpoint reads x1 plus x2 divided by 2, comma, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. But in layman terms, it's the average of your x values, comma, the average of your y values. So if I look at this example, let's look at the one in the middle first. You take your x values, 2 and -6, you add them together and divide by 2, which is giving you the average, which is -2. Take your y values, -5 plus 13, you add them together and divide by 2, and then you get 4. So then now that coordinate point is the midpoint between 2 comma -5 and -6 comma 13. So now let's go ahead and look at this first example at the top left. What is the midpoint between 520 and 1112? So let's go ahead and add the x's, which is 5 and 11. Add them together and you get, I think it's 16 divided by 2, and you get 8. Do the same thing for 20 and 12, which is your y values. 20 plus 12 give you 32. Divide by 2 and you get 16. So now I want to show you how you would type this in the Desmos. You could do it one or two ways. So you can go ahead and type in the x, 5 plus 11 over 2, and get 8. And then separately type in the y, 20 plus 12 over 2, and get 16. Or you could type it all in, like you see here, and then just find the coordinate point on the grid. All right. But if you do it this way here, where it does it all in there for one step for you, you have to put the parentheses. All right. Like the coordinate point like this. All right. Then you click label and it's going to tell you what the answer is. 8 comma 16, as you can see here. All right. Let's go ahead and look at the next example so I can show you another example of this. All right. So now what is the midpoint between 7, -3, and 4, 2? Go ahead and add the x's. 7 and 4, add the y's, -3 and 2. And of course, we need to divide both of those sets by 2. But let's put all this in one step here. So then we take 7 plus 4, and then we have, what is it, -3 plus 2? And then from here, our answer should be 5.5 comma -0.5, as you can see here. All right. So if you type it all in with including the parentheses, it's going to give you the answer for you. All right. So now let's go ahead and look at these last two examples over here. What is the midpoint between 18 -8 and -4 comma 22? All right. If you got 7, 7, you are correct. So now as we move forward, what is the midpoint between -3, 8 and -13, -14? If you got -8 comma -3, you are correct. All right, so now let's go ahead and look at these two examples here. It says, what is the midpoint of side NM? And then it says, what is the midpoint of side NO? So sometimes they'll say, hey, find the midpoint between these 2 points. But then sometimes they might say, find the midpoint of this side of a figure. All right, it's still find the same thing. So if I want to find the midpoint of side NM, I'm looking at 5, 2, and 12, -5. I'm literally finding the midpoint between those two coordinate points. All right, so when it comes to midpoint, I know I got to find the average of the x's and the average of the y's. I'm dealing with n and m. So I would take 5 plus 12 for my x's and divide by 2. And then I would take 2 plus -5 for my y's, and I also would divide by 2, as you can see here. From here, you would type all this in all together, and then it's going to shoot you back your answer, which should be 8.5 comma -1.5. Now when we look at our next example, which is find the midpoint of side NO, now we're looking for the midpoint between 5 comma 2 and 2 comma -1. So to find the midpoint, we have to add the x's and divide by 2, so 5 and 2, and the y's and divide by 2, which is 2 and -1. If you type all this in one step, it'll give you the coordinate point on the graph, which should be 3.5 comma 0.5. All right, that is the midpoint between these 2 points. So if you kind of eyeball it, 3 and then go up 0.5, it looks like it's in the middle. That makes sense. If we look at 8.5 comma -1.5 right around here, that looks like it splits this side in half. All right, so for this module, we're just covering finding the midpoint. If you have questions or concerns, feel free to let me know.